All right, welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements. And we have a very special guest here today, David.
Another repeat.
Yeah, every time you say special, when you're looking at me, I always assume you mean short bus.
Well, no, because you helped us launch this podcast.
That's terrifying. So
Yes.
hey, don't make me partially responsible for this.
No, it's true. It's true. You joined us when we were over at GCU, and you were good enough to come on early on. We were just a pod one, a fledgling.
I mean, we probably tripled our listenership from 2 to 6 after you came.
Yeah, great.
Maybe from 4 to 5. I don't know.
It's like my floor speeches. When you're done, you call your wife saying, "How was that?" And she goes, "Oh, there's Dancing with the Stars is on."
I wasn't watching. I hear you. So, congratulations. You won your primary.
Yeah.
Probably, from a primary standpoint, probably your toughest primary since your primary in 2012.
Look, anytime you have that
10?
anytime you have that sort of money being spent. But what was interesting is
It was like 4 point something
Yeah.
$million.
no, about 5.5.
5.5. Yeah. $5 million.
But the fact of the matter is, our polling was really good, and we engaged in some interesting mechanisms. The numbers we were able to sort of freeze up almost a month before. So you and I even had, and you and too, we all had conversations saying, look, numbers are frozen. He can keep spending a couple more $1 million, but you can't.
Right.
Yeah, but the fact is that you had polling. Like, you knew your numbers. I know your data is very important to you, and you spend money to make sure you understand how to really run a campaign.
Okay, this is a classic thing, and Sean actually gets this because he and I have talked about this for a couple decades.
Yeah.
Politics is math.
Yeah.
And yet we have a whole army of folks out there that it's feelings, it's this. No, at some point, politics is math.
Right.
And most people think they've ever looked at a poll. When you do a big boy poll, and if you were to print out every crosstab, how many thousands of pages is it?
I mean, it could be 10,000 pages.
And people have no concept. So when we do one of our big boy polls, we oversample in the areas we're concerned about, and then we will sit there in front of large screens and look at it for days.
Yeah, I hope some of the people who lost their primaries, the Republicans, are taking notes.
No,
because this is stuff we have talked about a lot. But I mean, I had an interaction with a Republican who was running in a primary here locally, and when I asked them, "What is your polling?" I got crickets, and you and I immediately had a conversation about this. And I said, and I was so frustrated. I said, how that means either a couple of things. Number one, you're not doing the work, or number two, you're just losing. You don't want to tell me, or both.
The reality of it is, for most of these races, the campaigns are about money.
Yeah,
but not money to advertise. It's people who are trying to get their hands on your money.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is this primary, we had multiple self-funders out there. And if you go back, one of the hazards of both self-funders is they're vain, and they often think they know the politics, so they'll often override the consultant or the actual polling, or they have a consultant who basically, what's the term? Oh yeah, stealing their money. I mean, something's wrong when you're one of my favorites, so it's not you. But I remember we used to have a campaign consultant here in town who specifically hunted for, actually still hunts for self-funders, and has a house like on the side of the mountain type thing. It's you wonder, how can he when he lives better than his own candidates?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Well, one of the things, I mean, you make a pretty good point about the crosstabs. I would bet that you are among the less than 1% of House candidates, of candidates for Congress that have ever even looked at a crosstab.
Oh, yeah. Look, we have a society anymore, we're electing good communicators. We're not electing, because they're not running, people who actually are sort of strategic or policy experts or experts in sort of the field they want to specialize in. But we elect people who really look good on cable television.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's been the nature for the last couple decades. And it has a problem. So, like, I'll sit on the polling committee for the NRCC, and we'll look at some of these candidates' polls and just tear up saying, you paid for this? I mean, my favorite one is, well, we did an auto dial, and here's our numbers. And you come back in saying, okay, and you supplemented it how you did this. And you're telling people, and you're giving this to contributors. The other thing is also, it's an intense frustration, and I don't think there's a cure for it, as the way we raise money has sort of broken down. I have, and there are a couple of them are friends, who basically hire fundraising firms. And their job is to say something crazy, and within minutes, 2 million text goes out across the country. Mm-hmm. And I have sat across from one of these people, and she's actually saying, oh, 35,000, 38,000, 38.9. She's counting the money coming in from the text blast, they said, because she just said something over the top on Fox Cable. And there becomes the problem. This is a candidate who's in a 36-point Republican district. She can never lose.
And yet she's sucking up money that should be going to other places.
And last time we did this, you particularly, I fussed at you a bit. We talked about the fake candidates.
Sure.
So-and-so is running in a district where it's a 40-point Democrat district, but they're saying all the right things. They're a good-looking candidate. They're the type of person we desperately want to see in the conservative movement. And people are writing them checks. And you go, you do realize it's a con.
Total con. Total con. The consultant's making all the money.
Oh, yeah.
Candidates being either misled into thinking that he or she is actually...
Are they part of the con?
Yeah, or they're part of the con.
Look, didn't we have a candidate in Baltimore?
Yes.
Good looking, spoke well, but never, ever, ever, ever had a mathematical chance of winning.
Well,
and didn't they raise like 20 million?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost 20 million.
And half of it went to the consultant.
Yeah, the guy who ran against AOC last time was had no chance. Raised $5 or $6 million.
Yeah, and so how do we help the contributing class to stop being conned? The voting class to understand, the tradition of finding the most conservative candidate who can win the general still has lots of value. Now, the harder part is today to find a conservative for me.
Yeah, good
Is
question.
it someone who loves and defends the Constitution, or is it someone that's just really pissed off? And,
or look good,
and that may
looks
be
good
a
on
whole
TV.
nother, but
To your point.
and so I have a real concern about this general coming up, but for a reason that almost no one's been talking about. See, that was a setup, and now you're supposed to inquire
what is
into
what is the
would that-
reason?
Why, David,
Congressman?
whatever do you mean?
Okay, there's something going on with the National Democrats and a lot of our candidates that just came out of the primary. And heaven knows, I'm one of them. And the rumor swirling around D.C. is that the National Democrats have spent a fortune doing opposition research on a bunch of our candidates. And their path is not just spending lots of money in Arizona, but they're going to show up with this opposition research and try to nuke our candidates in ways. In the old days, primaries actually, the opposition did good research and you found out if someone had certain flaws. For some reason, not much of that happened this primary.
No. It didn't. It didn't.
So I have no idea if that's the direction
So-
you wanted to go,
No,
but that's
Well,
my
look, this
caveat
is-
that I'm worried about right now.
And this is actually
Well,
goes
I mean,
to,
you have to think they're going to try to do anything that they can to avert what everyone's been calling for the last 6 months a red wave.
all you have to do, and this is one thing I'd love to get your input on, because I speculated last week that this FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago had very little to do with anything that they were looking for. It had all to do with trying to goad Trump into running again and to announcing it before November, so as to disrupt our elections, make him the focus of the midterm instead of Biden, which hurts us, and figuring that he'd be easier to beat than a DeSantis or a Pence or somebody else, because they're not going to have Joe Biden. And I don't know if they know who they're going to have, but he's not running for re-election. And maybe they concede that even Trump could win, but then that destroys the Republican Party for a generation in their mind. I mean, this is all me thinking about whether they're thinking the long term.
I'm not sure it's linked, but that doesn't mean the outcome isn't the same.
Right.
You know, the fact of the matter is, okay, this excites the base on both parties.
Yep.
But let's take a look just for Arizona, because Arizona is a somewhat unusual political marketplace. And this is me taking my, congressman hat off and, even my voter hat off and trying to just be sort of cold, mercenary, look at the math, and which is something we don't do enough of.
No question.
Arizona is probably the most urbanized state in the country. Because we all functionally, 65% of us live in the Phoenix area. Mm-hmm. We don't have dozens of small towns and rural, local politics and those things. It's boom, it's a megaplex.
I mean, we only have 15 counties. I mean, that's so foreign.
And
to
some have
anyone
almost
from,
no population.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back east or in the Midwest, Indiana has 99 counties.
Yep.
Yeah.
But now, the reason I go with that is suburban America politics are different than what's happening everywhere else in the country. And we're just functionally a ginormous suburb.
Yeah.
That's actually Arizona politics. So I need you to think in that fashion. The Republicans are, Republicans. The Democrats are Democrats. Fine. But now we have this world of some soft R's. There's not many soft D's. The D's have radicalized years ago. So this whole general election is functionally talking to the people that, I hate using the word independents. They're just folks who don't pay attention until it's 3 weeks before the election.
Exactly.
Call them the indifferents, like Stephen Shattuck from the old book, right?
Yeah, the indifference.
But these are people, we mock them a bit, but these are people trying to raise their kids, trying to
They're
survive
living their
inflation.
life. They're not news junkies.
Yeah, and in some ways, they're actually living the way Americans should live. You
Right.
should be able to live a life and not give a damn about politics because politics works. The society works. And the fact that, politics have become so pervasive in people's lives gives you an idea that something's horribly wrong. This is supposed to be a country of sort of freedom and economics and opportunity, not just, hey, I need to know what the hell the government's about to do to me. But what happens when those folks start to engage a month and a half from now?
Right.
And that's the concern, is those of us on the right, we spend so much time talking to each other.
Yeah.
And getting ourselves all juiced up and ginned up and making up a lot of crap that's not true, and the left does the same. And my fear is, are we ready to talk to that person she's just trying to raise her kids and figure out how to pay for gas?
Exactly.
They're just trying to survive.
Exactly.
Their little business that had a couple brutal years, it's just getting back going. And our arrogance is, we want to talk about what we care about instead of stopping for a moment and listening to what they actually need and what they care about. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Oh,
totally.
absolutely. You can. I was just thinking, you could even put that voter into, well, for lack of a better phrase, light beer terms. You've got a consumer base who's
I think you have two of us that don't drink.
No,
so.
I barely drink. But you have a consumer base. I mean, that's how you can usually gauge what's going on in the economy. Is that you have a consumer base who's having to, measure trade-offs between, am I going to fill up my F-150 for $150, and then what kind of
For
beer?
everyone listening, I drive an F-150.
Okay, but But then what kind of beer am I going to go in and get? Am I going to am I going to get a 24-ounce can? Am I going to get a 12-pack of Busch? Or am I going to get a 12-pack of Bud Light? Those are
but the fact
very
that-
different price points.
But the
Are
fact
they? I
that
have
is
no
we
idea.
No,
actually-
well, they are, and yet, but you, if you're a retail politician, which you're brilliant at this, you're watching this, you're seeing this, you're looking at what people are doing, and that really determines that independent voter is precisely who you're talking about.
Can I give you a quick
Because
thought?
those are real things.
But I'm going to give you a quick thought experiment, and this is something, if you're here in Maricopa County, if you're not talking about every single day, there's a problem. You need to demonstrate you give a damn about people.
Exactly.
Guess where has the highest inflation in the continental United States?
Right here.
The neighborhood we're sitting in. If you're a working person in the Phoenix Scottsdale area and you haven't had a raise this last year, you are now working almost 6 weeks for free.
Oh my God.
You have lost 6 weeks of labor. If you got the mean pay hike, you're working 4 weeks, actually a little over 4 weeks, for free. You've lost that much purchasing power because you live in the epicenter of inflation here in the Phoenix Scottsdale area. That means if I came to you and said, government's going to steal 1 month of your labor, you'd be losing your mind.
Yep.
There'd be protests out in the corner. But because it was done through inflation and because those was in the idiot class, the political, idiot class, walk around and say, well, we had a 13.1% inflation, which actually, equates to such and such. If we don't figure out how to explain your life is more miserable today than it was 16 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Your purchasing power, your retirement, your kids' ability to grow up and one day buy a house.
Yeah.
We're looking at some math. In a decade, if you're someone that relies on Social Security, you're heading towards about a 25% cut with dramatically more expensive on your copay on your Medicare. We're seeing some math. If we don't do something fairly dramatic in saving Social Security, in dealing with healthcare costs, in end of the decade, you could double the number of seniors in poverty. There's really crappy things going on, but this is about people. This isn't about me being angry over someone said something mean to me and I need to lash out. We, as conservatives, we love and care about people. We need to also show up at their doors and let them know we love and care about people.
Totally agree. I mean, it seems because of I think the divisive nature of politics and the name calling and all that. It's just we've lost sight of what it means to be a conservative and what the conservative movement means, which is to provide opportunities for people to better their lives every single day.
Look, it's one of my clarion calls, and that is growth moral? Is opportunity moral? And you take that and understand, when the poor person gets less poor, when the working middle class, and part of this presentation I do all the time, is I walk through what we accomplished after the 2017 tax reform.
Sure.
Partially, I'm on Ways and Means. I do taxes. I do Medicare finance. I'm the senior Republican now over Social Security, which is, as you know, is like the death
a big
nail
deal.
to most political people. But it's only $1 trillion plus a year,
Right.
and a couple $100 trillion underfunded. But you take 2018, 2019, first quarter of 2020, and take a look at poor people. Income inequality shrank. The poor got less poor. The middle class actually had some of their healthiest income growth. Minority females had double, just this incredible income growth. Every bit of almost that utopianism that happened from good regulatory policy, terrific tax policy, those things, where people's lives got better. If you're a leftist and you care income inequality, the couple years that actually had the greatest shrinkage of income inequality came from getting the tax system right, getting the regulatory system right, getting the incentives right. All that, every bit of those great things that happened those couple of years is now gone.
Yeah.
The poor are poorer today and getting poorer every day, substantially because of inflation. The middle class has lost 1/12 of their earning power. of their purchasing power. Income inequality is back growing. Food insecurity is back growing again.
Right.
Where the crazy thing, I know there's a lot of Trump haters and Republican haters out there, but strip my label. No, I'm a conservative. I embrace it. I love it. But strip the label. If you give a damn about people, what couple years made people's lives better, made the country actually more together economically? And what couple of years now have torn us apart and made life more miserable? And look, you know the absurdity. I have a 6-week-old.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. No, look, it's
We'll
joyful.
get into that.
I have an adopted little girl that's about to turn 7. Her birth mom walked into a hospital. I get a call 5 weeks ago saying, "Hey, you're going to come pick him up?" Pick up what? No, seriously. Are you going to come pick it up? And then they explained the little girl's birth mom walked in, had birth to a little boy, and no one told us. We had no idea. And I'm saying, please hold. I need to call my wife. I call my wife and say, we got to go pick up something very special tonight. And she goes, damn it, Schweikert. What did you buy at Costco again? No, I'm seriously.
Was this Olivia's birth mom?
Yeah, this is Olivia's
No
birth mom.
kidding.
So there's siblings, genetic
That
siblings.
is amazing.
We don't know on the birth father, but
Yeah,
we're told
but-
50-50. But look, and I'm an adopted kid, and all my siblings are adopted, so we're actually very comfortable talking about this. And my siblings and
I bet
we
a lot
all-
of people don't know that about you.
Oh yeah, and but and you're looking at your wife and going, okay, we're old parents, but it's the moral, it's the right thing to do. I haven't slept much. It's absolutely a blast getting spit up on again.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we have you on the show,
Well,
because
see-
I texted you at 4 in the morning.
Yeah,
and
but
you were
because I'm up at 4 a.m.
You were up.
I just thought that it was the competition that you and I have had
Yeah.
periodically over the last 20-some years.
Who can have the youngest child?
Yes, at the oldest age. And,
I am kicking your hind-
You are. Vin was born 15 months ago, and then you spring this.
But he
So-
has 2 versus 8 or
7.
7.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, look.
But I think I'm done.
Yeah. but where I was really going with this is less about actually the joys of having a little person, and I won't even get to the speech of fertility rates in that last
Oh my
year.
gosh,
the United
yeah.
States had the lowest fertility rate ever. So you want me to figure out how to get the economy to grow for the next couple decades where we don't have children. There's some real, remember, I'm the senior Republican over Social Security. Make the math work when your working population is stagnant.
Yeah.
It's
problematic.
the math becomes very difficult, but you're holding this little guy and saying, little guy, we now call him Matthew. We finally came up with a name.
Okay. That's
good.
When you have as much family as I do, everyone had trying to find a name that didn't offend someone. Or
Right.
Matthew, when you're 30 years old, your country will be $228 trillion in today's dollars in debt, and you're screwed. And the problem is, how many candidates are out there standing behind a microphone right now demonstrating they care about grandma's Social Security in 10 years or 5 years, or my 16 or 6-week-old's economic future in being able to live in a country of prosperity? And today's politics, I don't think, reward fixing things and making prosperity and having a society that good things happen. We reward who can sound most pissed off
Yeah.
in front of a camera. We've lost our minds.
We have lost our. I mean, when you think about, you go back to the founder of the Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, he had long debates about the existential issues facing the United States. I mean, we can't even get through a 30-second debate without screaming. How in the world do we fix Social Security and the long-term issues?
Well,
We'll do another show because a number of U.S. senators and I are basically saying, let's light ourselves on fire after we've been bathing in kerosene. We're going to try rolling something out in the next month or two, and it's going to be. Have you ever had one of those things you desperately wish there was another way, but there's no other way to make the math work? But if every day we don't do something like fix Social Security. And Medicare is 3 times bigger on the problem.
Sure. Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. I mean, we just had this monstrosity, over $700 billion of a Inflation Reduction Act that is nothing but
It's a subsidy bill.
Of a subsidy bill for different industries. And what is the true cost of that in your mind? I mean, seeing what you said.
Before you answer that, what
Okay.
what are you doing in a month or two with these senators?
Oh no, we've been working for months and months and months on a Social Security package,
Okay.
Yeah.
and we actually look like we have some bipartisan participation with it, which because you don't have a choice. A little frustrated because some of the things that economically make sense, and a number of our Democrat colleagues, are so terrified of AARP or. Remember, we're in a world for much of our population, they're living 1/3 of their life in retirement now.
Right.
And so financing that is just really a struggle. But we got to find a way to stabilize this because
it-
the level of unfunded liability is stunning,
Yeah.
and it's coming fast.
And this is something you're going to roll out before the election, or maybe after?
Yeah, you probably have to do it after, but we'll see. There's still a whole bunch of work with actuaries, and a year ago I thought I was getting excited that we were getting close, and some of the math we just couldn't make work. And inflation, oddly enough, we're having to go back and redo a whole bunch
Yeah,
of the
sure.
math modeling again.
I'm sure.
Well,
So I don't mean to geek out on you.
No,
but
no,
this is
and
sort
that was kind of
what
my
I
point.
do.
I mean, inflation's not going away. We continue to have a Congress led by Democrats who keep putting gasoline on a dumpster fire. And this latest bill is just more. It's just more of the same. And so it's not making what you're trying to do with Social Security or tax policy any easier.
Can I do something? But I've already done this in front of a camera.
Well, you are being filmed.
Great.
That's all good.
I want to do a quick thought experiment because this is the nature of this latest piece of legislation. It's actually the same thing as the CHIPS Act and others. We've become a subsidy economy. And there is a classic difference between those on the left and those on the right. The left believe in subsidizing consumption. That's Keynesian. We're supply-siders. We believe in incentivizing production because production makes things faster, cheaper, better. You hire
Right.
people. Subsidizing consumption doesn't mean you create more production and opportunity and jobs. So you have this, just one little sliver of this piece of legislation, but it's one you can get your head around. But this is how the whole thing is modeled. There's $6 billion for insulin. Okay, insulin prices are outrageously too expensive. It's just perverse. So the Democrats actually a couple months ago did a piece of legislation to take $36 billion in cash and hand it to the very big pharma that they despise, that they campaign against, that they protest, that they say horrible things about, but wink, wink, nod, nod. We're going to give $35 billion, actually I think it totaled up closer to $36 billion, of cash to big pharma to buy down the price of insulin. And if you're an insulin user, you go, I don't care, I just want my insulin cheaper. And those of us on the conservative side are screaming at them saying, hold it, hold it, hold it. Because as soon as the subsidy goes away, the prices go back up.
Yep.
How about bring more players, more participants, more production players into the marketplace? So there's this large, and these are big players, drug companies, hospitals, pharmacy, a lot of players came together and said, we're pissed off about the price of insulin. We're going to build our own factory. And I think they're heading towards making like 8 of the generic insulins. You can actually, if anyone actually cares, you can Google it and see the factory's like a year away. But then the setup and the licensing takes
Right.
another year or two. And they will bring in their insulin, full retail, cheaper than the subsidized price.
subsidized
Than the
price.
subsidized price.
Of course.
Amazing.
But the competition would completely change the entire
Yeah, but that
structure of the
wouldn't be
market
fair.
and didn't cost the taxpayers. So we're going to reach in the insulin user's pocket, take their tax money, hand it to the big pharma, pretend we gave you a deal,
Yep.
instead of doing the things necessary. So we propose saying, all right, take just a sliver, a tiny sliver of that cash, and let's help this co-op get licensed, but put FDA officials on site as they're building it so it can be in production as soon as possible. Incentivize other players into the market. Because what they did with their subsidies now on solar panels, on all these other things, they in many ways locked out
Of
new
course.
entries into the market. It's a subsidies for incumbency.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it turns out, if you actually look
That
at
is
all
a
those,
great term. It is
Yeah.
a subsidy for incumbency. It's
And I
members
don't
of
mean
Congress
incumbents-
being able to
it's
go
not
back.
incumbent members, it's incumbent businesses.
Yeah, businesses, but even
it's a- but
members.
it's
And
the-
bureaucracies.
Yeah,
even
but,
members.
but it actually fits it all.
Yeah, you get, because you
It's,
know what
it's
the
the
next
business
punchline is.
bureaucracy and politicians.
And it
Yeah.
turns out those ones getting the subsidies happen to be
Because
the ones
look-
that write the checks to
Yeah,
the
but
Democrat
I
Party.
mean, you mentioned the CHIPS bill. Look how many local sort of Republican-like, conservative-like people were like, "Yay for the CHIPS bill!" I'm like, well, this is just a big corporate welfare subsidy
the
bill.
funny thing is there's articles now rolling out a month later saying, we're heading to a glut of chips. Seriously, The Economist has a full spread article from a month ago saying, hey, a year from now, we're going to be bathing in chips because there's so much production already coming online. And it looks like, and I think it was a Wall Street Journal article 3 days ago, talking about, hey, it turns out inventories are already starting to stack up on chip production around the world. It was a delivery supply chain issue. Of
course.
And so for that, we're going to put hundreds and hundreds. And look, there's one estimate out there, if you add up all the tax benefits and everything, the CHIPS Act actually costs like 400, not the 280, $400 billion. And it puts that if you want to do certain research and you want some of the government money, you now have to go be friends with the White House because the White House signs off.
They
it's,
write the check.
It's the ultimate pay for play.
Yep.
And now you see
Well,
companies
it's
but-
industrial policy, which is
It is
not
industrial policy.
It's not what we're about as conservatives.
But you now see like some of the big chip fab manufacturers, one here that used to be truly pro markets and that now like 76% of its money goes to Democrats, $1 million a year to Black Lives Matter. You start to see things like that and you realize they figured out the scam.
Yeah.
They're
playing the game.
If government's going to hand them cash, they almost have an obligation to take it. It's the elected officials who should be just ashamed that this is what we do now with modern politics.
Yeah.
So it truly is a pay for play.
I don't know how it's going to be fixed. It's probably, what you're doing is going to help, but man, you've got to feel pretty lonely because there aren't.
I get,
there's
as you
not
know,
10
I get the
people.
crap kicked out of me daily.
It's just not very many people focused on the long term and fixing it. So we talked a little bit about the election coming up. What's your assessment? I have said many times on previous episodes of the podcast that I think the House is going to go Republican without question. The Senate's a toss-up, and the Biden's not going to run for re-election. But whatever. That's further off. So, how do you see things? Were there any surprises here in Arizona or other places in primaries recently as we set up to go into November?
On the primary, no. And I'm going to be a little bit mean for a second, but it's meant to make a point. I was stunned how bad a number of the races were on their messaging, on how they spent money, on what they talked about. It's like I had a bunch of children running vanity campaigns. And maybe before anyone's allowed to run for office, they're forced to go to campaign school on, I know.
Speaking
yes.
Chris's language.
It just, because,
God bless you, sir.
but before I ran for office, I was like you. I was one of the people who wrote the checks. And you got to stop writing checks to clown shows.
Yeah.
You just, and I fuss at you and you make excuses all the time.
Oh, well,
And
I had some
I'm
friends
letting the
running
listeners
this
into,
time,
No,
and-
no. If they're your friend, it's like a friend who has an alcohol problem. You don't go out and buy them. You don't go out and buy them a pint. You sit them down and say, "I'm going to help you, but you got to show up at your first 12-step meeting."
Yeah.
Which is sort of fun in giving to a former liquor wholesaler. But here's my predictions at this moment. And
No, but your point is the point that we've made on the show. We keep making. It's like so many candidates out there don't want to do the work of.
they want the flattery.
They want the flattery. They want to say, "Hey, I've got this consultant or that consultant. This person is raising money for me," when they haven't done the basic work of figuring out why they're running and everything
no,
else,
no,
or going to campaign school and just by themselves, sitting in a room with other candidates
You're not
who are thinking
cynical
the same
enough.
thing.
You know, you see, once again, you were
No, it's
you're-
all about the money. I know what you're going to say.
money, power, vanity, but mostly it's about the money.
I know what you're going to say.
And
but
the
I'm
number of campaigns
I
that
live in a
just-
world that I would love to see that.
Yeah, I know. Yes, and I always wanted to meet a unicorn too. And I have a 6-year-old who still believes they're real.
Hey, my 8-year-old still believes they're real. So just
So there's hope.
Quiet.
The fact of the matter is, you had a bunch of campaigns. If you look at some of their top lines, more than 50% of their money went to overhead.
Yeah.
If you're a contributor,
Certainly didn't go to polling.
but if you're a contributor, when do you start saying, "I'm going to stop financing clown shows"? Yes, you may have a good pitch. Yes, you keep annoying me. I'm going to write you a check. And some of the fundraisers out there should be ashamed of themselves for the commissions they take, the overhead they charge, and then the fact they're raising money for candidates they know are about to blow up.
Yep.
They know that things are coming out, and they're still asking for the check.
Oh yeah.
To prediction, we take the House. The Senate, I'm worried right now. Immediate tracking this week is tougher than a toss-up.
Yeah.
But it will ebb and flow. But a couple of the Senate races around the country, the numbers are moving away from us. We have only the House, and we're going to have to sort of educate the voters that just because we own the House, nirvana isn't here. And we have 2 levers the Constitution gives us. One is oversight, so we can investigate everything. And 2 is money.
Yeah.
You want to deal with, instead of going out hiring 80,000 IRS agents,
86,600. right?
yeah, we'd like to put money.
Not 87,000.
But we'd like to put money into technology and other things that actually would be fairer, more efficient, and not have the dystopianism of one of the most unionized workforces
Right.
in the country.
Yeah.
Our ability to do that, okay, we put that in an appropriate bill, we do it in a piece of legislation, we send it to the White House, and they veto it. Are you ready to let us say, we're not going to send you any more appropriations bills, so we're going to go into a government shutdown? The fact of the matter is, if we control the money, you got to use it.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I got to give you a caveat. We went through this during the Obama administration. We had, I think it was a 13-day shutdown. Kevin Knight, my chief of staff, went back and looked up our old number. We had 405 phone calls within a couple-day period of time during that. 404 of them from this district, from the Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Fountain Hills, Carefree, Cave Creek area, were demanding we give in to President Obama and open up the government because they weren't going to be able to visit the park, that they had shut down the monuments, that they couldn't get their visa or their passport, or that they were hearing that they might not get their check.
Right.
It was stunning. All these people would tell you how tough they are, and we need to fix the system. As soon as it became something other than a candidate standing in front of our politician standing in front of a television, they wimped out on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had like only one call during that time that said, screw them.
Yep.
Screw my check. You guys got to win this because, and my fear is the Democrats know this.
Oh, sure.
They saw the playbook saying, okay, Republicans take the House. They try to fix a bunch of the crazy ass things the Democrats did the last year and a half. So they're trying to fix it. We'll just refuse to sign it. We'll go into a government shutdown. We'll start to shut down the parks. We'll shut down the World War II memorial. We won't send anyone their passport. We'll tell Social Security recipients that we might not have enough workers to send them their check. And it should be a week before the Republicans cave because the Republican base will become apoplectic. They're not getting their checks or their travel or their passport. People need to toughen up. It's not enough to elect politicians who will go to the mat for you if you're not going to stick with them.
That's a great point. Well, and it is coming. I mean, there's just no doubt that, because especially if it's just the House, right? Maybe, well, I guess we have the Senate. But my thought is if Republicans win the Senate, it's going to be it's going to be 1 or 2 seats.
Yeah.
And same with If Democrats hold it, it's 1 or 2 seats.
But if we take the Senate, even if it's by a single vote, we will have the budget reconciliation game. And we did some of that in a previous show, I think, where we get to use the 1974 Budget Control Act to do one budget bill that if you're reducing spending or moving money around, you only need 50 votes plus a tiebreaker in the Senate.
Right.
Which is what they just
So you're outside
used.
the 60-vote rule. And that's what the Democrats have been doing. That's how they move 3 of their massive bills now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Turnabout's fair play.
So with that, I mean, this might be a loaded question, but you're looking at the Senate race here. Like, what do you see as? Do you see a path of victory? Do you see?
Well, I see one.
Like if Blake Masters were sitting here right now, and you could give him your unadulterated wisdom as to how to move forward after pretty bruising primary for the most part, and he's got unlimited amounts of money.
Yeah, but they don't
Kelly
have
has
unlimited.
unlimited.
Kelly has
Yeah.
unlimited, and there's the problem is, a lot of folks out there. My favorite one is, well, David, I have this idea for a television ad. You should do this, this, and this. That's a great idea. I need you to go raise me about $200,000, and I can put that up for a week.
Yeah.
Or well,
And they
right
and
now
then-
you can put it up for 2 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
today people have no concept. Remember how we talked about the most urbanized state in the country? We're one of the most expensive media markets in the country.
Yeah.
And so if you have opposition that's willing to spend $100 million, how do you get our Senate candidate to be able to tell his story? So I would have him just fixate on what makes people's lives better. Primaries have become substantially, let me tell you how I'm tougher or how I'm angrier or this and that.
Yeah.
That's not, you're no longer talking to the votes we need. There's a lot of people out there who are hurting a lot more than I think we realize. I'm looking at people piling up credit card debt, chewing up their savings, just trying to maintain their lifestyle. And that comes crashing down on the public at some point.
Well, and I think that this time the crash on that is going to be more severe because as a result of COVID, you had a tremendous amount of savings and you had a pent up demand, and then that demand was unleashed, and then the Biden administration, did a bunch of things to create inflation along with other things. And so now it's this double whammy of they thought they were flush, and now they're really going to struggle.
And so if the Federal Reserve succeeds at doing what they're obviously trying to do, which is break the back of the labor market and start putting people out of work.
Yeah.
How many people out there have signed a new rental agreement that's outrageously expensive, but they think they're secure in their work?
Right.
And when they get a pink slip 3 months from now, their world's going to come crashing down on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the unemployment is always a lagger in this type
But
of
when it's more
economy.
than a lagger, it's what the Fed's functionally doing is they need to crack that labor market because you got to crack a wage price spiral movement. And we won't geek out too much in the economics, but the real question is, as a Senate candidate, you have to now just assume Republicans are voting for you. You have to assume Democrats are not voting for you. Go find those people who are persuadable and it may only be 5-7% of the
I
population.
mean, I think it's 300,000 people.
It's tiny.
That's all you need to talk to.
And the folks who need their vanity stroked every single day, who are in the Republican Party, you and I know we have some of these people. If they don't get a phone call or a piece of mail, or somehow they didn't get an email today, well, your campaign fell apart. No, you aren't our target.
Right.
We spend every dime talking to that persuadable voter. And this is also something for Republican groups.
Yeah.
If you hold one more damn meeting of having all the Republicans come and sit in the room talking to Republicans
Yeah.
about Republicans, talking about Republicans to discuss another meeting with Republicans, and it's a problem. It's become a social network. Instead of saying, get off your hiney, there's a neighborhood across the street, here's a list of the independents, go knock on their doors. Oh God, we don't actually go out and knock
You
on
mean
doors.
you want us to work?
You want us to go canvass and
Well, but
I want to
knock
yell at
and-
my
Or write-
neighbor.
or
talk
write
to
li-
people?
Or write little notes or something that has to do with talking to it. Let's say your number's correct, which it actually might be. 300,000 people statewide. You realize our precinct organizations, our women's Republican clubs, this and that, could write every single one of those people 2 or 3 handwritten
Yeah.
notes.
And that would make a huge difference.
It would make a huge difference. But will that happen? Because it would require an effort.
Yeah.
And we're too busy holding meetings because, well, for most of these people, their entire social network are people like us. We all think alike. We feel like, the fractional differences between us ideologically are marginal at best. But Joyce and I have done a little walking on some of the new parts of our district. And my Spanish is still pretty marginal, but I'm knocking on doors. Had the funniest thing happen about
And I would bet
3 weekends ago.
no one has experienced that.
Oh no, this is a classic. So I'm walking. My wife, we're insane. My wife has a stroller. I have my 6-year-old.
And those of
We
you
do
who are
old
listening,
school
this is
politics.
old school. This
Yeah,
is what
but
people don't
look,
do
we went,
this anymore.
We went to mass in the area. So, all right, and so I had just a list of about 70 houses. These were houses that our data system said, hey, these are persuadable voters. And on the very first house, I knock on the door, and dad answers, speaks no English. I'm saying that, but the son comes, and the son's in his 20s, and he's so excited. And you want to know what he was most excited about? He goes, "It's so neat to meet you. You're a congressman. I've never met a Republican before."
Oh my gosh.
That was his line, is I've never met a Republican before. And he then goes on saying, they're conservative. They had, a little statue of Mother Mary out in front. They were a conservative family. They'd worked hard to buy this house. This house was sort of south of Osborne near 32nd Street. So, I mean, it's a neighborhood that's up and coming. They've worked hard there. But it was the reaction of, damn it. Now, this area is brand new to me.
Yeah.
And they've never had a Republican knock on their door.
That's amazing.
That lets you know that we really need to step up our game.
Yeah.
No question. Now, what's your district, how far west does it go?
Functionally, I'm thinking this, I run sort of Granite Reef to the 101, do this little tiny stretch, very little population there, back to 19th Avenue, 19th Avenue all the way underneath Christown Mall.
Okay.
19th Avenue.
So Missouri over to like 16th Avenue,
Okay.
and then 16th Avenue down a bit, then you hit Indian School, then you jog around over to 32nd Street, and then all the way down to functioning Van Buren.
Wow.
So
And then
32nd
all the
Van
way-
Buren?
Yeah, it's sort of
Okay.
that bottom corner.
That's the corner that then it goes
yeah.
up there.
So it gives you a sense. Look,
I'm just checking because we just bought a house. We're still in the district. So.
oh, good. I'm glad. I'm
But
very proud
this
of you.
is a new thing for you because I mean, as you mentioned before, functionally you were basically Scottsdale, Paradise
and
Valley,
now we have
Fountain Hills.
Arcadia, the Biltmore area, but the North Central. So if you're
Yeah.
in an irrigated lot,
Yeah.
you're probably in the congressional district.
But then
That's
I mean,
great.
anyone who's spending time at 16th Avenue, 19th Avenue, and then down
Mm-hmm.
that way, I mean, heavily Hispanic, a lot of different urban
It's
issues.
more complicated.
Yeah.
In the North Central area, it's beautiful homes.
Sure.
You know, these are the old, almost historic, irrigated. It's sort of when you get south of Osborne and, sort of that McDowell to Osborne, there's a lot of folks in there trying to buy houses, fix them up.
Yeah.
But this district has for Arizona Congressional District, actually, it's very, very white. It's also very well educated. This district is educated off the charts.
Yeah, it's the most educated district,
Maybe
I think, in the country.
one of them. It has to be in the very
Top
top
5,
tier. And I mean, maybe one that has MIT and Harvard, might be. But this is off the charts, well educated. But the fascinating thing is, I have precincts in North Central where the average house is probably 1.2 million, who vote more liberal than my precincts in Sunny Slope.
Yep.
And so the old paradigm of
Yeah.
income equals party affiliation, it's more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a number of very well-educated, high-income liberals, and I have some blocks of incredible hard-working middle class who are just trying to find someone that gives a damn about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a demographic shift with with where things are. I think that the educated whites are shifting more liberal and Democrat, and the working class Hispanics are shifting more Republican.
Though you might enjoy a couple of those crosstabs, there's a fracture there. I can show you some of our crosstabs of neighborhoods that are sort of my 19th Avenue to basically 7th Street, and all of a sudden crime, homelessness,
Yeah.
fentanyl, which they never thought. And now with the light rail and the fact there's homeless people living in the alley behind
Yeah.
their house, they've been voting Democrat since the 2016 election or 2018 election, and all of a sudden they don't like what it's brought them. They're not thrilled with Republicans, but they know the Democrats have screwed up
They've walked away from
the lifestyle for their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So learning to sort of actually be empathetic and speak to what's going on in those neighborhoods is really important.
Yeah, and I guess my point was, I mean, you're going to take an approach to the electorate there, regardless liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, that's very unique. It's very personal. It's very one-on-one. And you're gonna target who you need to target, but you're going to create relationships, new relationships that you haven't had before. That's actually going to be really beneficial for the party.
No question.
In a way that nobody else within the delegation is really going to do, I would argue.
Well, that may be more flattering than it's deserving. I also have the benefit.
I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm just stating.
But I
facts.
also have the benefit of having, grown up here. My whole life is here. When you're knocking on doors and the door opens and it's someone that knows your family, and some of that, and we've tried to explain this to people who've tried to run against me. Yeah, he's saying, "Hey, have you really done a good poll? Do you know how many people are like my relatives?"
Right. Sure. It's
or that my mother sponsored them in AA. I mean,
yeah.
you get all sorts of crazy
This
things.
is the smallest big town, I think, around, and it matters.
And one of our family mottos is conservative, but not a jerk about it.
Right.
I mean, be kind, work hard, because it's a war out there. Everything's weaponized, and you're going to get people say really mean things about you and make crap up. And there is, though, something very positive in that the public is starting to get a lot smarter than a lot of the political consultants. When
Great
you can,
point.
That is a
and-
wonderful point.
And look, you can actually, because you watch it, you're often in these battles. And in my previous primary, I saw us take a hit, millions being spent, saying, this guy doesn't seem to understand. We've already focus grouped this. The public already has figured out that we got screwed by a rogue employee. They already know the story.
It's been litigated.
Yeah,
It's done.
And the Democrats spent what, 13.5 million going at me 2 years ago. And you sit there and go, fine. It hurts my feelings. It makes my wife sad, but it doesn't move the
It's not gonna
numbers.
move the
Yeah.
numbers.
And you start to realize the idiot class out there who think they're brilliant in politics.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Gosh, we need to have you out more often. This time just goes so fast when we've got.
Oh, we
the
knew
Congressman.
we'd be using the whole hour today
I
because
know.
there's so much to discuss. We didn't even get to Lynn Cheney.
You mean Liz Cheney?
Liz Cheney. I always mix them up.
Lynn's the other
Liz.
Lynn's
Yes.
dad. Lynn's,
Liz Cheney.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to her.
Lynn is her mom.
Yeah. She
Um,
obviously.
Sister?
No, sister's Mary.
Oh, God. I
That's
knew it
right.
was on there. Yeah.
Well, that was a foregone conclusion, and she knew it, Liz, and I know Harriet. She'll be a fun colleague for you to have.
Good. Good. I've only
she's
talked
a-
to her once on the phone. So
She is a very smart.
We're having somebody on the
She's
show
an
next
attorney.
week who actually knows her quite well. It should be an interesting. We're having Cody Ritchie on next week.
Oh.
and who does a lot of work in Wyoming and has known Harriet for years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it should be an interesting
you
discussion.
know, it's as you do more of the podcasts, the ability to actually do a show where you have an adult pollster, folks who actually run focus groups. I know that sounds boring, but even if
No,
you
we
get
had
a
Rich
Well, we
Tao
had
on.
Rich Tao
okay,
on.
in
It
that
was-
case, you're already doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had Rich Tao.
I
We
missed
need to
that.
have him
We
back
need to have
on.
him back. He's overdue.
Yeah.
He,
But
And
helping
Harry's great.
folks understand, because and some of this is actually even a little bit of the post-COVID environment, where the tribalism of our relationship networks have actually narrowed.
Yeah.
And as they get narrower, you get a more concentration of being around people that think like you, who are like you. And that's where taking big boy polling, if you have the resources of focus group, to understand, I need these people's votes. What do they care about?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's
But
not
it's that hard.
Yeah, but you notice no one does it.
Right.
Well,
because it's hard. They don't do the stuff that's hard. They don't do
Well,
the
they-
door knocking. They don't do the
See, I'm
personal
gonna give
contact.
I'm going to give you my
Hey, don't do the
dystopian-
stuff that's hard.
But I'm
That's-
going to
that
give you
should-
my
that should be
dystopian
the
answer.
first time we've
for a
ever
lot
gotten a
of for a
signal
lot of
from
the
Robin.
candidates.
Oh.
Hey guys,
She
let
is
me give you
All right, wrap it up.
let me wrap
We're
it
getting the hook.
A lot of the candidates and a lot of the campaigns don't actually want to hear the answer because the answer might not be where their fantasy is.
Right.
Yeah, it's certainly not where the consultants are leading them.
That's right.
So
well, thank you,
with that,
Congressman.
yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for your friendship. Thanks for all the great work you do for the state of Arizona and for your constituents and for your family. And God bless your new family
Yeah.
with Matthew and Olivia.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Till next time.
Bye bye.